had been extradited from Miami to Brunswick, Georgia, county jail in Glenn County. And when I got there, they put you on 3 days like solitary confinement. And they would let us out our cell to eat. You would hear the COs calling mail call. They would have mail call. So we would come out to eat, and during the time we were eating, we would have mail call. And so they would call the guy's name to get the mail. So I noticed they had called out a name that was familiar to me. And so when I heard the mail, I went back to my cell and I looked at my paperwork and my indictment. And I seen the same name on my indictment. And I didn't know this guy. I had never seen him in my life. As a matter of fact, that was my first time ever being in Brunswick, Georgia. So after mail call, and we was eating, we had dinner, and before they let us in, I walked into this guy's cell. I said, "Hey man, your name is so-and-so?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I'm Sonny." I said, they got you on my indictment, and I don't even know you. I never seen you before. Matter of fact, I never been up here in Brunswick before. And he was looking all scary, a big Georgia dude. So I was like, "Man, how did you get on my indictment?" He said, I don't know. You know, I heard of your brother before, but I never heard of you. I say, "Good, man." I say, let me try to get you a lawyer so you could get off my case, because I don't know you. Clearly, I don't know you. He like, "Yeah, man, you know, I don't know why they put me in this indictment with some more guys from up here, and I don't know what's going on." He said, "But man, if you could help me get off your case, man, I'll get off your case, because I don't know nothing about what's going on." I'm like, "Cool, what's your number?" And stuff, right? And so we had started talking a couple of days after that, and you know, I ain't have much money, but I was trying to figure out what was going on myself. They had me on this big indictment with people that I didn't even know and other names that I didn't know. So they finally let us, we did our 3 days in solitary confinement, and I got out. And Brunswick County Jail is kind of strange because it's all glass. And you could see the people that was in there on different charges. They had different type of uniforms for violent offenders and non-violent offenders. And then we was getting the paper, the newspaper, so we kind of know what kind of charges the dudes had that was in Brunswick County Jail. And I remember looking at the news real often, and they would talk about USP Atlanta, talking about it was one of the most dangerous penitentiaries in the United States. They was talking about how one of the inmates had beat one of the officers in the head with a hammer, beat him to death. And they said the prison was out of control, that the inmates controlled the prison. And so even the warden had got on the news, and he was saying the officers know what they facing when they come into get employment at USP Atlanta is a dangerous prison, and this and that. And so like every 3 or 4 days, something else would come up about the Atlanta Penitentiary. So I was like, man, that's crazy. And so I was thinking to myself, you know, when we had went to sentencing, that we had asked the judge to sentence us, or could he recommend that we be closer to home, because they had federal prisons close in Florida. So being in that insane asylum was the last thing on my mind. I just shook my head. I was like, man, I'm glad I ain't going there. That's crazy, you know. And so after our sentencing and stuff, well, before that, my brother, he was on the run. And I would kind of call him, because back then you could call the phone booths. So I would kind of call him and talk to him and you know, tell him, you know, stay out of Dodge, man, stay out the way, man. Let me just go on here to trial. Maybe you could beat this. Maybe you won't have to face what I'm facing. So as time passed, maybe a few weeks passed, you know, I had heard they had caught my brother, and you know, he was on his way to the county jail where I was. And so they had us separated because, you know, the government, they play so many games. You know, they was trying to say that my brother was telling on me and I was telling on him, and they was keeping us separated so we couldn't really communicate. So we found a way to communicate. But anyway, after all of that going on, and I remember sitting in the county jail and some guys was talking to me about my case. They didn't even know who I was, but they had detailed information about my case, who was telling, how much drugs was involved, and all kind of stuff. And I just listened to them talk about me, you know, which was really amazing. And by the time we went to trial, we noticed that almost everybody that was playing basketball with us in the county jail and everybody that was in the unit, they was on our witness list. And we didn't even know that until we got to USP Atlanta. So anyway, the day came where we was to be transferred to the prison where we was gonna start doing our 35-year sentence at. And USP Atlanta, they had a hole over there, which means you will go to USP Atlanta in the holdover part, and then you will stay in the cell there, and then when they finally figure out where you're gonna go, they'll come get you, and then they'll transport you to the prison where you're gonna be at. And so we had got off the bus, all of us in line. So by this time, the marshals, they knew what prison that we was gonna go to. So me and my brother, we was in line. And so they identified each prisoner by a number. So they was calling numbers, and as they was calling numbers, the inmate would walk up. And so I was like, man, what is it about these numbers that they not even calling us by names no more? They're calling us numbers. So a federal prison number, it replaces your name. And it is equivalent to your social security number. So everything that you got, whether it was mail, whether it was a phone call, whether it was visitation, your prison ID number had to be on it. Otherwise, you couldn't get the phone privileges, you couldn't get mail, you couldn't do all kind of things. So really the 348-71004, that replaced my name. And my brother had a different number. And so the last 3 digits of the number tells you the district where you caught your case from. And our last 3 number was 004. Remember, so that means we was out of the Southern District of Florida, even though our case was out of Brunswick, Georgia. And so I overheard some of the inmates asking the marshals, hey, what prison I'm going to? And so when I heard them, I asked one of the marshals when he came to where I was with his notepad. I say, excuse me, sir, where's me and my brother going? What prison we going to? We the Campbell brothers. And he said, and he looked at his pad, he said, oh, okay, y'all are home. This is where y'all will be doing y'all time at. And when he said that, my eyes almost bulged out of my head. I was like, what? And so USP Atlanta, when we drove up on it, it looked like Count Dracula or somebody stayed there. It looked new on the outside, but when we got on the inside of it, it looked dingy. It smelled a different way, and it felt a different way. You know, it felt like, after hearing all of that stuff on news and reading in the newspaper, it kind of felt like somebody was gonna come around the corner and stab you to death or something. And so we was kind of spooked. So you should have seen me and my brother, man. We was together like Siamese twins, you know. And sure enough, when we got there, like the prisoners, they were disrespecting the guards. And then we got to the cell. We finally got to the unit. You know, you had dudes there that had long plaits in their hair, and dudes had rollers in their hair and jerry curls and all kind of stuff like that. So I'm like, man, they got a lot of faggots in here or something. And so, man, I didn't even think, you know, we didn't even think that we was gonna make it out of that prison. So, man, I tell you, man, you have to you have to get your mind right, and you have to get it quick when you get to USP Atlanta, because you could lose your life just looking at somebody, looking in their face. So yeah, man, USP Atlanta was a dangerous place to be. We didn't know how we was gonna make it. We didn't know if we was gonna make it. You know, they had to get a new warden. They said the prison was out of control because most of the prisoners, they was on weights real hard. So most of the prisoners was real big, and the guards was smaller than the inmates. And it took 6 or 7 guards just to deal with one inmate. And so that place houses some of the most notorious killers and convicts, you know, in the United States of Florida, or in the United States period, for that matter. So we had to figure out how we was gonna settle down in that thing, and it was crazy. And I'm telling you, like, I'm real, you know, and I've been through a lot of things, and I was a lot of things on them streets, but being in that USP Atlanta, man, I could just feel right now how I felt being in that place, man. Scary. So that's when me and my brother, we had, you know, kind of made a pact that same night. Yeah, we were saying, man, look here, man, we probably ain't gonna make it out of here, man. But man, if we make it, man, you know, we gonna either live together or die together in this thing. But man, that thing was out of control, man. USP Atlanta. You talking about the haunted house? That's what that felt like.